against the wall. I can tell you that Florida has interest in Jacob Trouba, so if that's the case and they're looking for a right shot defenseman, potentially Spurge. Andrew Burnett's down there right now. Andrew Burnett absolutely freaking adores Spurgeon. But again, Paul Fenton has made clear that his priority is to try to re-sign him. I assume that those conversations with his agent, which happens to be Zucker's agent, by the way, will commence here shortly. And if Spurgeon suddenly hits the trading block, trust me, there's going to be teams lining up for him.
Tell me about the Andrew Burnett thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, he had a ton of options. I assume that Philly was one of them with Chuck Fletcher and Brent Flair there. I assume that Colorado was one of them to go and work with Joe Sakic because Sakic's one of Burnett's best buddies. And there were a lot of other options, both coaching and management. But from the outset, he had great conversations with Joel Quenneville. Joel Quenneville was one of the first calls that he got when Andrew lost his job here. And he's going to go down there and coach. He was given a long-term deal. He's going to work with somebody that he has an immense amount of respect with. Remember, I've got to try to get the timing right. But Andrew played for Quenneville when he was an assistant in Colorado. Then he goes to Chicago. Remember the one year that the Wild in Game 82, I think it was 2008-9 season when they missed the playoffs. The Wild beat Dallas in Game 82 and knocked the Stars out of the playoffs. Mark Crawford was the coach and put the Blackhawks into the playoffs. Well, the next day, Andrew Burnett has a Bud Light truck show up at his house, and cases of beer were delivered as a thank you gift from Blackhawks coach Joel Quenneville. And then actually that offseason, he wound up signing there and ending his career actually with the Blackhawks as a player, Burnett. So there's a lot of respect there between the two. And he's going to go there. He's going to be on the bench with Quenneville and Mike Kitchen, and I think it's a great move for him. I've been talking to him about places to go live down there. I think he's going to be absolutely awesome down there.
Yeah, and, listen, I didn't know Andrew as well as you did by any stretch, but I always thought he was just a really solid guy.
Yeah, and a great hockey guy. Yeah. He's done everything in this organization, 2 stints as a player. He's been everything from assistant GM to hockey ops advisor to director of player personnel to assistant coach on the Wild. So he did everything here. To me, it's a big loss. It's just another good person that's leaving the organization right now in a very quickly thinning front office. I'll be interested to see where Paul Fenton fills in these holes because this is as thin a front office as I've ever seen. There's not a lot of scouts with a ton of experience right now. Their analytics department is essentially gone. Alex is 1 foot out the door. They haven't replaced Bruno. Chris O'Hearn replaced Shep. But there's just not a ton there. So I'll be interested to see if after July 1, which is usually when it would happen, if Paul starts filling some of these holes in the front office.
Fixology Repair has a new location downtown in the St. Paul Skyway to go with their other Minnesota locations, Mall of America, 3rd floor by Nordstrom's, and downtown Minneapolis in the Skyway, right near the Wells Fargo Center. Fixology Repair, fixologyrepair.com.
There are some things in life that you just can't live without. Now, whether it's a special piece of jewelry, a watch, or even your smartphone, you want it in working condition. At Fixology Repair, we are committed to restoring your pieces so that everything works or fits the way it ought to. Watch servicing, chain repair, and broken screen replacements are just a few of the services that we offer at our 2 locations, Mall of America and the Skyway in downtown Minneapolis. Please visit us at fixologyrepair.com or at fixologymn on Twitter to learn more. Mention this ad and get a 10% discount on our services.
All right, back to Twitter questions from Mike Hutton. What is the most valuable, realistic trade chip for the Wild right now? Spurgeon, Zucker, Kaprizov, or other?
I don't think that he would trade the rights to Kaprizov. I mean, every indication the Wild are getting is that this guy's going to sign here in a year. And again, if the only way he could, like I keep on reading these things, he'll never sign here. If he wants to play in the NHL and win, he'll go somewhere else. Unless the Wild trade his rights, he cannot go anywhere else. The Wild own his rights. If he wants to be an NHLer, he has to, at a minimum, start here. Spurgeon, they would prefer not to move him. So Zucker, to me, is the guy. It just seems like where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, everybody I talk to says that he's the guy that Paul's talking to a lot of teams about.
Makes sense. From KCL89, he asked, if you could update the article you wrote about leadership, do you want to get into that, or do you feel like you've talked enough about that?
I can't remember the article. Oh, the one where just Charlie mentioned the leadership void. I mean, that's stuff that, again, I think as I've mentioned, Paul Fenton's aware of the issues in the room. He has met with some of the leadership core. Had conference calls with them and things like that. And, he's trying to, make sure that this team comes together as a team again, because as both Paul and Bruce have said, this is unacceptable that they're out of the playoffs. They want to nip this in the bud, and that they, they want to come together as a group and kind of mold some, fill in some cracks. Let's put it that way. I mean, but in terms of, I know it's a broad subject. I remember early in the season when the Wild were absolutely awesome. We talked about how tight-knit the room is. Mm-hmm. The reality is that winning is you always have close rooms. Losing, you have fractured rooms. What we saw at the end of the year is or what the signs were to a fractured room. But nothing cures that better than winning.
Absolutely. It's funny because Terry Ryan, when he's a general manager here, was always given credit for having quality guys and good locker room, good clubhouses, and he always told me, that's when you win. When you win, the room's going to be fine. From Casey, follow-up question: have any new scouts been hired?
Just a couple of PJ's cohorts have been hired, but right now, nobody with a ton of experience. Darren Yapik is the most experienced of the Wild scouts right now. There's Brian Hunter as well, but he's kind of more of a USHL college scout and is responsible for a lot of great college pickups by the Wild. Ernie Vargas, has been a Wild scout for a long, long time. There were at first it looked like he was going to be leaving the organization. Now I think that he is being re-signed. But right now, really the new scouts are people that PJ Fenton has had affiliations with.
From Zeke Boyett, longtime listener.
And again, just with scouts, usually scouts' contracts go to June 30th, and you usually will not be if you're hiring an experienced scout, usually you can't do that before July 1 because another team doesn't want to take a scout that has maybe been in their meetings and have proprietary information and put them suddenly on the Wild payroll. So, usually this stuff comes after July 1.
From Zeke Boyett, how much of a risk do you think it would be to select Spencer Knight 12th overall?
I don't know about a risk. I mean, I can tell you the Wild like him, and I do totally believe Paul when he says that whoever is next on their list when it gets to 12, or maybe he moves up. Like Vancouver, there's always that option that, I think Vancouver's 2 spots ahead of him. Maybe that's part of a trade that could happen as you flip picks or things like that. But I do think that if Spencer Knight was right there next to on the list, that they would go with that. I think that long term, there's a lot of people that believe that Spencer Knight has a long future as an NHL goaltender, and the Wild still, even though they signed Robson and they have Kokkonen, long term beyond Dubnyk and Stalock, they don't have a real answer right now. So it just would not shock me if all the so-called perennial, guaranteed NHL studs are gone by 12, I think that he absolutely would take Spencer Knight. So I don't, risk. A lot of teams don't like taking goalies in the first round because you can't. It's such a mental position, and it's just so few goalies that have been taken in the first round. Or I should say it the other way is that so many goalies have been taken in late rounds make it. So why go out and waste a first-round pick? But if you think that Spencer Knight is heads above every goaltender in the draft, which he is the number 1 overall goalie available, I think they absolutely would take him. But there's going to be these players there. It'll be interesting. I mean, there's I was looking at today. There's the Russian kid, as I've mentioned. There's Kaliev. There's this guy Krebs. There's this Soderstrom has skyrocketed up the charts. There's Broberg. I mean, there's going to be pretty decent players for the Wild to take there. A lot of people, Wild fans, are clamoring for the Caulfields. I don't think that he'll be there. There's Brink, who's here from Minnesota, but I think he's more of a late first-rounder guy. So it'll be interesting to see where we go.
You know who handles my insurance?
I do.
Do you know who handles your insurance?
I do.
What's his name?
Tony Hoaglund.
Hoaglund.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number 1 in car insurance since World War II and number 1 in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763 888-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
From John Cummings, do you think with all the RFA and big names not wanting to re-sign, Fenton will be wishing he had some of his assets back to make a hockey trade for a scorer?
Well, that has been my only criticism of trading all three of them together, is that unless you are winning those deals outright, you're throwing away assets. And to the point that now they are just intent, it seems, on trading Zucker, which is the final of their big assets. And so, the Niederreiter for Rask thing was a really quick trade that happened with very little research done on Rask, and it just happened, and they paid for it. Again, Fiala, it just seemed he was so intent. I mean, from last summer, I was hearing that Fiala. And so he took, and look, I get trading Granlund. I wouldn't want to give him $8 million in a year. So I get using him as an asset at some point, but I just think that they should have probably expanded that out or tried to make more of a, get more assets back there and there. And then obviously Donato for Coyle, it is what it is. I mean, there was, again, a point where Coyle maxed out what he was doing here. And so if you go out and trade for a guy like Donato, maybe Donato is going to wind up being here. It is funny, though. I was thinking this yesterday. I feel for Donato because I guarantee if you talk to Donato right now, he's like, well, I can't worry about if the Bruins win the cup. I can't pay attention. It's not a lot of pressure of Charlie Coyle scoring 9 goals and maybe putting himself in the pressure of the Conn Smythe thing. But that is not true. I mean, he's a human being. This is a burdening thing. The team that he was drafted by, that he grew up watching, is about to win a Stanley Cup, potentially. And that stuff is ekes in you. I remember when the Anaheim Ducks traded Matt Cullen to the Florida Panthers, and that year they won the Stanley Cup, and Matt couldn't sleep at night. And even though Donato was a minor leaguer, I mean, this is the team he grew up with, and he's going to watch him potentially win a cup, and the guy that he was traded for is off to a monster start there in the postseason. Where same thing when Rask was here, the pressure behind the scenes of every day, Nino, that stuff gets to you. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Donato coming in next year, but this kid is a good kid. I do think he's going to have a great off season, and hopefully he can come here and be a heck of a player last year and next year, and be the guy that we saw in his first 15 games with the Wild, and maybe not the guy that we saw in his final 10 games with the Wild in Iowa, because the guy that we saw in the first 15 games had a lot of promise.
The most important question of the podcast from Russo Slacks is above 80 degrees considered to be Slorts weather?
Yeah, probably.
So much enthusiasm. From Kevin Hanlon, let's see. I'm trying to find some different topics here. From Rick on Twitter, with Dubnyk aging, I think it's a great pick if someone doesn't slip to them. Okay, that was back to the taking the goalie number 1. From Magnus Anderson, okay, here we go. From Jeff Moss, will the Wild
Poor Magnus.
I know. Well, no, some of the questions are repetitive. They're good questions, but we've already touched on them. From Jeff Moss, will the Wild sign Thomas Vanek?
I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what they need. I mean, this team is slowing down, especially if they get rid of Zook. So I would probably not go that way. I just don't. Again, it's getting older, slower. Why do it? I think there are better options out there for right shot, right wings. If you can't, like the Vertanen kid in Virtanen or whatever his name is in Vancouver, he's right shot, right wing. It makes sense. One guy. If I'm Paul, I really try to pursue this Kapanen guy for Kasperi Kapanen. I just think that. As Craig Morgan at The Athletic reported a month ago, Arizona is talking to Toronto about Marleau, but the only way they're going to take on that contract is if they get an unbelievable asset like probably Kapanen or Janssen back. So if I'm Paul, I try to be, and maybe he has been, try to be really aggressive with trying to get that first, because if all of a sudden Kapanen's traded with Marleau, two things are happening for Toronto. One there is that, one, if you're Minnesota, you just lost on the asset that maybe you want, that to me might be more intriguing than Nylander at $7 million. And the other thing is you're allowing Toronto to free up the cap space to really get Marner done. So to me, I'd be quick on that.
From Pat, any word on how Rask's summer is going? Where is he, and who is he training with?
I just see him on social media, on his Instagram stories and things like that. So he's back overseas, and again, at the end of the year, he said that he was going to train and all that stuff. But again, as I've said, I don't care about if the Wild are definitely, it sounds like, giving him another chance to come back because they want to see if he can better himself. But look, the way the Wild's depth chart is right now, he's a fourth liner here. I mean, there's just no way around it. So, I mean, Paul Fenton can say all he wants that let's see if he gets, if he can reestablish himself. But if you're on the fourth line, not getting penalty kill time or power play time, he's not going to produce, most likely. So he's kind of biding his time, waiting for injuries. And so, regardless if he comes into shape, I mean, he's going to have to work himself up in the lineup.
From